Virginia Woolf said, "I will cut adrift. I will sit on pavements and drink coffee. I will dream. I will take my mind out of its iron cage and let it swim this fine October." She was expressing her desire for creative freedom and mental liberation. This is what I've been granted here at RAiR, absolute freedom. This is a picture of my studio 5.5 months in. The title of the show, Origin Stories, is meant to include many kinds of origins. All these paintings have origin stories, which I will explore with you in this talk, but don't worry, I promise it won't go over 30 minutes. In essence, these paintings are my effort to make sense of the world. They're dark, dreamy fairy tales woven into an expression of our environmental derangement. You might see them as mythical. I wish you could see them better, but post-apocalyptic, or as part of an alternative ecosystem. Hi, folks. Have a seat. Where the world is kinder to non-humans. Tree of Eyes has many sources. It's a Bonnard-like tapestry with a huge walking tree whose eyes spill out. There's a fire licking her feet. There's the duality of a second figure on the lower right rising up out of the water like some siren. And there are little pockets of space where the viewer can enter as a very, very small person. One wonders about the origin story of a painting, its process of coming into being from the original seed of an idea and changes involved in its development and destruction, and the difficulties of bringing it all to a conclusion. Did it originate with a color or structural idea? Yes. From a memory? From something I read or saw? Yes. Did it just derive from a random mess of paint that's been scraped on a surface? Yes. Or from deep-seated anxieties about what it's like to be human in this very moment? Absolutely. This is a work on Yupo done before that big painting. You can see the walking tree of eyes. They were inspired by a drawing of Bosch called "The Wood Has Ears, the Field Has Eyes," or "The Hearing Forest and the Seeing Field," created around 1500. It was meant to mean keep your head down in times of danger. He was Dutch, predating the Spanish Inquisition, and it was an anxious, religiously conservative cultural climate. This is a work on Yupo done after the big oil painting. All were created from a single idea. By this time, I'd already lived here for 6 months. The natural environment in which I paint is reflected in my work. Close observations from daily walks become part of the paintings. For instance, walking down Howard Cook Road every day is always an adventure. Things spring to life unexpectedly. Quail, mule deer, tarantulas, tarantula wasps, a great horned owl, thousands of yellow sulfur butterflies hovering over the alfalfa fields, hundreds of tiny colorful flowers, frogs, turtles, lizards, springtails, yellow-headed blackbirds, flocks of red-winged blackbirds, sandhill cranes, long-tailed grackles, you get the idea. And Charlie, you have this to look forward to. So this is how it works. I arrived here in March from Louisville, Kentucky. It looked a bit barren, although the sky here is never barren. Within a few months, this is what it felt like to walk down Howard Cook Road. See, so I am here, and my dog Lily is down in there somewhere, and that's the rest of Howard Cook Road. This is a little painting that began after a trip to Bitter Lake on my second day here with my neighbor, Guillermo Galindo. So you have to understand, I had driven 4 days through dust storms. I just landed, and he knocked on my door saying he had cabin fever, let's go for a ride. He was a brilliant sound artist, among other things, and he played this very haunting soundtrack while we were headed over there. I noticed a bird flying at the same speed alongside the passenger door. seemed to be looking at me as I was listening to this music. When we got there, Guillermo led us down a road that was barricaded, but he reassured me that he walked there all the time. Before long, something was headed toward us that started as a little vertical pin, which got larger and larger as it started to come toward us, until finally it became a 6-foot female ranger riding a Segway, pulled by a husky at about 20 miles an hour over the gravel. She gave us a good tongue lashing. And I thought, wow, this is really going to be an adventure. This was followed by this big painting in the show. The figures got painted out. So, let's see. Oh, here. Got it. Okay. So, Guillermo was here, and the ranger was there, and I had a little girl at some point down here, and she didn't make it either. And so the painting became about the white poplars I see out my studio window that turn gold in the evening light. Painting is a process of building block by block, then eliminating. It's a construct. The waters lapping along the bottom like flames in the other painting are an expression of climate anxiety. Cézanne said, "The landscape thinks itself in me, and I am its consciousness." I have read that 100 times, and I love it, and I can't even understand it, but it totally makes sense somehow. The landscape thinks itself in me, and I am its consciousness. It's a kind of creative misremembering. The painting's needs tend to override whatever story I might begin with. Hand and feet, this painting had origins I didn't realize until I was practicing for this talk. So notice the hand grenade shape, the purple and yellow foot, the dismembered hand, and the wand. So I was researching through my old work, and during COVID, I did hundreds of these little collage pieces of imagery that was kind of disrupted and reassembled. And here you can see lots of hands and feet and sort of animal shapes. You know, COVID, for many of us, was a time of both great productivity and fear. The sheer intensity helped me to further transition to a storyteller. I work from my imagination, fringed with catastrophic thinking, using ruptured imagery. Then in 2022, I made fireflies when the Ukraine war broke out. So it's kind of a Joan of Arc marching through this dreamy, geometric world with the wand and the feet and the dismembered hand. That was followed by this painting. I was interested in the women warriors, the women fighters in Ukraine, and how to depict them in different ways. So, you know, one has a prosthetic leg. Another has kind of a sheath for an arm. And there, I mean, if you could see this painting in full light, it's very ironic, kind of bright cherry pastel colors. And it's a little bit like Bruegel's Blind Leading the Blind, with the men falling down the creek. And you have these things flying overhead, which I think probably started as birds, and they ended up to be more like drones. Oops. And this is Ukraine, again, sunflowers that turn into satellites. So let me digress for a minute. My origins as a painter began after graduating from Yale. I mean, I painted many years before that, when I became a regular on Brooklyn streets. Before that, I'd never worked with landscape in school, and I didn't really know how to put it together. But I wasn't interested in, you know, a mere picture or in working from photos, but in the experience. And so in New York, it was the wind, the light, the people passing by, the harbor, industry, neighborhoods, gardens. Everything affected everything. This is a painting of Remsen Street. And you can see most of the painting is this big concrete slab, and you can see the World Trade Towers are still there. So one day I walked out with all my gear, and I used to wear this polar zip-up suit with a head thing that came all the way out to here. Mostly people thought I was a man. And I was in the newspapers a lot. They always described me as he. And this thing, it was like an extra large. So I went wheeling all my rig there, and I found 3 feet of snow. You can see this is early spring, and horse-drawn carriages, and men in stovepipe hats, and women in long dresses. And it turns out they were shooting The Age of Innocence on my spot. That's what I love about New York. 9/11 drove us out of New York, and we moved north of Baltimore. And I did a lot of drawings with like thousands of marks, in the woods, standing there day after day. And you can see I added, there's a couple of figures struggling in the bottom. So I did a whole series of pencil drawings. And some of them became studies for paintings. I really, at the time, was interested in landscape as a genre and its long history. And so this was very much influenced by the Barbizon painters. And they were mostly made up of Parisian city dwellers that went south to the magnificent old Barbizon forest. And it was very exotic to them. And you can't really see anything except shadows here, but I have to say I feel like even after 11 months here, Roswell is still exotic to me. And I was still painting perceptually. This is basically the backyard. I was dragging these huge canvases out, and at the time my son was making these birdhouses, which are up in here, and they were all photographed and included in Raw Vision magazine and circulated all over Europe. But I was trying to make a narrative out of what I saw. But meanwhile, working structurally with these vertical trees that kind of cut the space up, and you could move back and get subliminal, further narratives. I lived in Italy basically for years, starting when I was 16 as an exchange student. And I did these highly structural landscapes over the years, looking at paintings like this by Carpaccio, The Martyrdom of 10,000 Saints, of Roman soldiers who were crucified after they converted to Christianity. So Mount Ariat is way in the upper right corner. The painting is like 10 feet. So you're standing in front, and you become implicated with the figures getting crucified. And then there are these pivotal axes that just jet you back and forth the whole canvas. I don't think anyone is better of telling a story through visual structure than the Italians. It's an abstract language that tells a story. And then later, Renato Guttuso, who was one of the most important Italian contemporary painters in the 40s. He was a socialist, and he lived on Via Margutta in Rome with many other painters at the time. Philip Guston befriended them when he was at the American Academy, where I was a visiting scholar in 2018. This painting is also very structurally driven, but now charged with color and simplified planes. And there's Guston, who was very inspired by the Colosseum. And, he found, with hands and toes and feet, he digested them and reconfigured them into his body of work. And then there was Picasso. This is part of his Minotaur series. I think any painter interested in narrative has to contend with Picasso and Guston. Nicole Eisenman exemplifies that. And this I saw last time I was at the Met, and it's a Chinese painter, Zhao Fei, and I just love his paintings. I guess he's a contemporary painter that I look at and am inspired by. It's the combination of memory, dreams, and abstraction, and materiality. The paintings are really layered up thick with things in the paint. So when I was at the American Academy, I took with me all these laser prints by Edward Hicks called The Peaceable Kingdom. And it seems so absurd to be thinking about the Peaceable Kingdom, so nostalgic. So I painted over them and came up with my own little surreal take. Eventually, I let go of working from observation. This transition took years of unsuccessful paintings as I adjusted and developed a new language. Opium dreams emerged from that process. A hypnotic, dark, and complex invented landscape that underwent several changes. For example, the black horse, which I don't know if you can see. There's a black horse walking through the painting, originated as a white horse, a mare. And so the painting, and there's also a woman at the lower left, and these weird plants that look like opium, suggesting a dream, a hallucination. It makes you think of Cézanne's "The landscape thinks itself in me, and I am its consciousness." Chicken and Ram, Rainer Maria Rilke said, "The only journey is the journey within." This was 2018. It was a year of loss for me. I lost my mother, my job, my beloved dog, and I began painting many mythical, strong female figures. The Marriage of Miss Chick. She has a dazzling wedding dress made of fingers or penises. I began to use humor. This painting sold right away. And perseverance. I was depicting women with exaggerated, unattractive bodies, but they had great strength. As a child, I remember lying on the rug with silly putty and pushing them into the comics and pulling them out and seeing Popeye and stretching him and seeing what happened to the image of him. So here I have olive oil leaping through a weather catastrophe, cloaked in humor. And another little perseverance. She giant. She makes a bridge. She's bent over backwards as a protector of the land while carrying the weight of a crocodile. Eudora Welty said, "I like the idea of being able to confront an experience and resolve it as art. It's similar to Joyce Carol Oates saying literature gives form to life." So this is not so much a description as a distillation of an emotional state. And I was looking at a lot of Cycladic figurines. There was a time in New York where they were being shown everywhere, and there's a beautiful collection at the Met. I love how stable and solid and quiet they are. But this is kind of a judgment scene. So these figures march up the hill, and these four figures pass judgment on them. It's kind of like a pearly gates. So this painting was in the show, Fried Eggs, and you can see this bird-like form. It's like at a turning point, looking forward to the future, looking behind to the past, and in the present. These were painted at Jentel in Sheridan, Wyoming. Here I have a woman as a weather vane, and then a kind of broken Venus in this mountainous landscape. So this is what I saw out my window there, these incredibly snowy mountains. And so they found their way into my origin stories. And you can see there's two birds. There's one that looks really nasty here, and then there's another one that's the wrong scale. and it's calling out. I have a lot of paintings with birds. They're sort of like canaries in the coal mines. This painting, it's called The Mother Tree. And by the way, this is completely painted over now, and it's over at Bone Springs. So you'll be able to see another version of it there. I used to have a plant called the Mother of Millions, and she spawned countless seedlings as a survival technique. Checkers. This is an immersive, dreamlike jungle. The trees stand like two sentinels at each side of a portal, shaped like a keyhole. The checkered claws are like plastic bags caught in trees that indicate the disquieting legacy of industrial so-called progress that has dismantled companion species and atmospheres. The curly thistle I see every day on the lower left, I see that on Howard Cook Road. And, in the middle, as I was making this painting, I thought, oh, there's Mother. I don't know if I thought my mother, it just came to my mind. It was a very clear face, and I sort of covered it with trees, but to my mind, that's the center of the painting. A painting has to reveal itself over time. I stay with it in the hopes that the viewer will stay with it too, and it will unfold over time. It's not a quick hit, either to make or to view. I'm undertaking the challenging task of slowing down our racing mind to pause, look, and observe. Do you know the average viewing time of a painter in museums? Good for you, Farnaz. You got it. And think how long the Mona Lisa took to paint. But then you think, the museums are jam-packed with people, so they really need that 20 seconds. But it is something to think about as an artist. Portage, this painting is like a board game. There was a stray parakeet on La Jolla Road that I helped Justin and Shannon rescue. And after that, I used my invaluable gift of time in the residency to scroll through videos about parrots and parakeets. And so here the parrot at the top is carrying a box with another bird in it. Later I read there are biblical stories in which parrots witness the apocalypse. The sunflower is a wheel echoed by the chessboard with trees growing from its squares, symbolizing playing roulette with the health of our planet. There's no longer a human hierarchy of anything. There are hints of the human past. Over here is a little figure falling down. And reflects maybe the failures of the human past. Eruption. Toni Morrison said, the very first story we hear as a child is Once Upon a Time. We have the parrots again carrying boxes. I used tumbleweed in the middle here to model for this kind of nighttime forest. There's a story by Italo Calvino called The Cloven Viscount about a soldier who returns from war cut in half. He has a good side and an evil side. And they both wander through this very dark landscape in the spirit of this painting. This was painted at MacDowell. It's called Travelers. There is a big sun there, but you see there's a wolf that's kind of irradiated on the left side. And this is Gottlieb. It's kind of an oracle with lots of little stories within the bigger story. There's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist there who hiked from Brazil with the migrants through the Darien Gap. And she was told, as a single woman, to never leave her tent at night because that's when the cartel went through. And so I made this painting And it's kind of like through night vision goggles. And there's the humans going one direction, and there's the migration of animals going the opposite direction and flipping over in this very red little painting. Nocturne, innocence and corruption. It's a witness to something. This one's called Prehistoric Garden, painted on Yupo. Yupo's an interesting material. I'm teaching this workshop at Bone Springs this weekend using Yupo. It's kind of like a polypropylene. It's a sort of a plastic kind of a paper that accepts oil and it accepts water, and you can cut it up and collage it really easily. So, this assemblage became the inspiration for this painting, which is called Sea Change, which goes back to the origin story of life, the sea, a pile-up, things living, and arrived at through an open process of collage and juxtaposition through different materials. Ezra Pound's advice to artists was to make the world a stage. All these aspects create origins that are put through a cement mixer to make my paintings. It's enormously complex and emotionally, intellectually, and experientially driven, while quite irrational. That's why I love to paint. That's why I'm a painter. I hope they reach you in a perplexing, emotional way, like a recognition, a poem, or a good piece of music. I hope they hold you. Hold your attention for more than 20 seconds. Thank you. I wish we could wander back and see the paintings in the gallery. Any questions?
When is your class
It's
this weekend?
Saturday and Sunday. Okay.
See you there.
Okay, great. Full house. Yes. Well, it's a different ecosystem. I'm kind of a Yankee, and I've never lived in this kind of desert prairie fauna before. And, like I said before, it started out looking just very barren. And the transformation was just extraordinary. I mean, I spend a lot of time out there walking. I've got a big dog. And I still, after all this time, I don't think there's one time where I don't see something that kind of startles me. This morning I saw a big old turkey vulture. I saw, a little gray fox the other day. I mean, and not only that, but it's something about the people here. I find there's a lot of eccentricity, which I adore, and there's this great sense of independence and resourcefulness, and you get an idea and you just run with it. Like Miranda's like a really great example of that. Anybody else? Yeah?
I will not be able to take your class. I'm so sad. I'm so inspired. Would you use a certain kind of glue with the UFO if you're collaging?
It's called Line-Co. It's a bookbinder's glue. But it glues so easily. And then you can put it on wood, and then you can use oil paint on top of it. I mean, you can go forever with it. And it has a little bit of transparency, so you can see what's underneath. But you can also get it so it's more opaque. At first I thought, this is like, ugh, what is this stuff? But it holds the paint in a really nice way. Yupo. Oh, Line-Co. Line-Co. Yeah. Anybody else? Charlie, what are you thinking about? Yeah, totally.
Do you still think of these as
Yeah,
Is this a landscape painting?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is like a theater with a, I just think of it in terms of the picture plane, and you're moving. It's like a window. We used to talk about a window versus a wall, and a wall is just everything stays up to the surface. But a window, if you think of the Renaissance people, it disappears, and you could be a bird and just fly right into the space of the painting. So, yeah, sea and mountains and woods and yeah.
Well, I was thinking about like plein air painting and like there's something interesting, I guess, because these are not made plein air, right? You're painting in the studio.
This one.
This one.
You really can't see these images, I think.
But
Yeah.
there's something that's interesting to me about like starting as a plein air painter and then
Yeah.
this isn't a question, I guess, it's just a thing that I was thinking about because you asked me.
Yeah.
There's something interesting about starting as a plein air painter and traveling and something you lived in a lot of different places and then coming here and talking about the flora and the fauna and the ecosystem and all that and how the need to do the plein air painting because it seems to
Yeah, when
you're pulling it in instead of going to it.
yeah. Somebody asked me before, do I ever go out and paint like that anymore? I tried it once and it was gone. I mean, I've lost interest. I've lost that kind of focus. It just, I think we're also at this tipping point, and I think as expressive artists, we're on the cusp of something, and it's our job to sort of process that and put it out there, and and that Cézanne quote, there is something about regurgitating what we're feeling and putting it out there. I couldn't do it within the limitations of plein air painting anymore. And I think there were a lot of years I just made just crap, just, predictable, terrible stuff. It was, and,
I'm in that now.
huh?
I'm in that now.
I don't think so.
Laurie, I have a question.
Yeah.
Your work really ranges in scale from 8 to 10 inches to several feet. How do your ideas change? Do you have an idea that requires a certain scale, or how do you make those choices?
They're very much about marks. And so if I have a little painting, there's no way I can transfer that to a big one. And there's a kind of a comfort in working really small and just kind of richly. And then when you get big, it's just really fun and physical. And, you get back and you can make big changes and you can throw paint down and lift the canvas up. And,
So do you have an idea first and then decide what scale it needs to be, or do you have a canvas and say, oh, I think I'll work with this little one. What do I want to do on it?
well, the workshop is kind of about, generating ideas, not starting with a fixed idea and then going to a linear. I mean, I've taught a lot of years, and we used to say, it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 1, 4, 2, 6, and then you go back to 0. And, it's just like this back and forth thing. So I think both the small and the large scale it's also different ways of destroying it in a good, healthy way. In the big paintings, you can just take a giant rag. The little ones, you can scrape it out. I think I just don't really have a plan. You can see this kind of goes all over the place, this talk, and that's kind of how I think and process.
So do you work in like registers or like little vignettes? I mean, I know that you provided some examples like Welsh and Edward Hicks, and I know that in their paintings there are these little separate layers. Does that inspire you in any way to work that way?
Yeah, like little worlds within worlds. And the last time I was in New York a couple months ago, I got really caught up in the tapestries, the medieval tapestries, because it's just like a crush of imagery, and there's often a tree that's fenced off, and it's like the feudal lords, and then the servants, outside of the fence and territories, and then paintings have territories too. And I mean, I kind of have to get into a lot of chaos to feel like I'm going to find something out of that. And maybe a lot of what I do is make chaos. I like to make chaos.
So that brings me, I've been thinking about your use of color, and it's edible, it's so delicious. Could you talk about how you have arrived at, obviously you can tell it's your work by the color.
Yeah, Miranda and I were hanging a lot of my paintings over at Bone Spring yesterday, and some of them I go toward one color. This is going to be a blue painting, or this is going to be a yellow painting. And some, it's just like red, yellow, blue, and a lot of browns. And I mean, a lot of times I work with what we call unnameable colors. It's just like a mess. Delacroix said, "Give me mud and I'll give you the skin of Venus." So it's all about how the colors relate. I mean, I taught color for 30 years at Pratt Institute. I kind of know my way around the different properties of colors. So I've got that toolbox. And still, it is really hard. It's hard. And I think for so many years, you want to draw it and fill it in. And then, or you want to work with values. It's a painting about light and dark, and you get all the composition. And then the color comes after that. But no. There's a way you can start with color and then find the values after you've worked with the color, push and pull and space and everything. So you kind of reverse what you want to do. It's just like if you don't know a lot about drawing and you want to draw a head, you start with the eyes, nose, and the mouth. Bad idea. You got to deal with, the volumes. So in painting, I like to just start with big, wet, complementary colors and a rag. Mm-hmm.
So if I understand it correctly, you were painting real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And explain to me how you learned to loosen up and make those beautiful things. Was it hard? Did you go through a long transition of trying to make everything realistic and then go, ooh, that's too much? Or, I mean...
It got to a point where I noticed when I would go into a museum or something, I was never going toward the landscapes or the impressionists or any of that stuff. I was always going to the abstract painters, the more conceptual painters. That's, and it just took, there's a lot of lag time till I could kind of find my own voice. I think that's what it is. It's finding your own voice. And painting in New York City was one thing, but then moving to Baltimore and other places, it was just, I just felt like I was like part of this army of middle-aged people, trekking around with their paint boxes. Nothing jived anymore. So, and then I was teaching abstraction. So there's this light, color, and design course that Pratt developed over 25 years. And it's really all about abstraction. And then, that painting, I showed the Italian painting, it's all based on abstract principles.
So it's pretty easy for you to go from realism to...
No, it was 10 years of just painting utter trash. Nothing is easy.
Because I get carried away, and next thing I know, I spent way too much time trying to make something look real. I'm like, that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to have exposure so you just see what's going on and possibilities. Yeah. All the time, like right now. I have these gigantic canvases. I don't know what the heck to do with them. And, you just keep going. You can't wait for the inspiration. You just have to keep plugging. Well, so that first slide of all those canvases, to me, it's just like I mean, that's the wonderful thing about having a big studio here. They're all around, and I keep thinking they're finished, and then I work on them some more, and then, they're all kind of like a simmering soup. It's not like one, and then I finished it, and then another.
That's how I do it too, and I don't know if I don't know anything.
I mean, we have permission. You don't have to censor anything. And if you're bored, I had a teacher who once said, if it's hard, that means, no, if you're bored, that just means it's hard. Bored is, you gotta find your way through it. Everybody's bored, especially now. Just put on those headphones. Get your nice cup of coffee like Virginia Woolf. Daydream. Just start to throw up. I mean, Leonardo said that, look in the stains of walls and find the battles of men. So give yourself something that's kind of complex to look at and dig in. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much for coming.